Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhari Vallabha Girivanadhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhari Janavalabha Girivanadhari Yasodanandana Prajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Prajagana Ranjana Nandana Prajagana Ranjana. I forgot the next line. Bonachadi Yamunatira Vanachadi Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhari Vallabha Girivanadhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhari Vallabha Girivanadhari Yasodanandana Vrajagana Ranjana Ranjana Vrajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Vrajagana Ranjana Sudanandana Vrajagana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bhagavacharya Satarya Satashishi Madhis Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gauda Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haryas Thakur Ki Prem Sikho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gauda Bhaktavinda Ki ISKCON founder Srila Prabhupada Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Navadvip Dham Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Ganga Mai Ki Shishi Radha Golokananda Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrindaki. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktarinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktarinda. So we're reading from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And we're on text 184 of the fourth canto, talked with Ramananda Roy. We just last week listened to the description of Radharani, what she wears, her jewelry, these types of things were being related. And now we're going to read what Chaitanya wants to know more about the relationship between the two. So we got Gaur Pranim on Monday, so this is fortunate we can hear these pastimes going into Lord Chaitanya's appearance date. What verse? Madhya 4, 183, 184. Actually, I was thinking about this verse when I forgot the line of the, when I was chanting, I was thinking, okay, we got to read this today. I was thinking about today's verse and got completely off instead of paying attention to what I was doing, which is not unusual for me to get distracted. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. Okay, so text 183. So even Satyabhama, one of the queens of Sri Krishna, desired the fortunate position and excellent qualities of Srimati Radharani. All the gopis learned the art of dressing from Srimati Radharani, and even the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, and the wife of Lord Shiva, Parvati, desire her beauty and qualities. Indeed, Anuradhati, the celebrated chaste wife of Vashishta, also wants to imitate the chastity and religious principles of Srimati Radharani. Even Lord Krishna himself cannot reach the limit of the transcendental qualities of Srimati Radharani. How then can an insignificant living entity count them? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "Now I have come to understand the truth of the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. Nonetheless, I still want to hear how both of them gloriously enjoy such love." Ramananda Roy replied, "Lord Krishna is Dhira Lalita, for he can always keep his girlfriends in a subjugated state. Thus his only business is to enjoy sense gratification." Kind of, because all we know about this is material. That's our enjoying sense gratification. We think of what we know as sense gratification. This is on a spiritual platform. This is, it's there. All this enjoyment, it's on a spiritual. Krishna is in the center. Okay, so, purport. We should always remember that Krishna's sense gratification is never to be compared to the sense gratification of the material world. As we already explained, Krishna's sense gratification is just like gold. The preferred reflection of that sense gratification found in the material world is just like iron. The purport is that Krishna is not impersonal. He has all the desires that are manifest in the perverted reflection within the material world. However, the qualities are different. One is spiritual and the other is material. Just as there is a difference between the life and death, there is a difference between spiritual sense gratification and material sense gratification. 188. A person who is very cunning and always youthful, expert in joking and without anxiety, and who can keep his girlfriends always subjugated is called Dira Lalita. This verse is from the Bhakta Rasamrita Sindhu. Bhakta Nectar Devotion. Om Aganda Timarandasya. Kananjana Shilakaya Chakshrom Hitamina Taisma Gri Gurave Namaha. So we've been talking even this week about rasas. So that's where all rasa comes from, is from understanding rasa. One gets from reading the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So this is a little bit about rasa here, and there'll be a lot of verses quoted from different books. Because Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami compiled this literature for the glorification of Lord Chaitanya. So we have, and he drew from all the other acharyas, preferably the 6 Goswamis. 189. Day and night, Lord Sri Krishna enjoys the company of Srimati Radharani in the bushes of Vrindavan. Thus his pre-youthful age is fulfilled through his affairs with Srimati Radharani. Thus Lord Krishna spoke of the sexual activities of the previous night. In this way, he made Srimati Radharani close her eyes out of shyness. Taking this opportunity, Sri Krishna painted various types of dolphins on her breasts. Thus, he became a very expert artist for the gopis, for all the gopis. During such pastimes, the Lord enjoyed the fulfillment of his youth. This quotation is also found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And then Prabhupada breaks down the rasas when these verses, and the acharyas do, how they're categorized. 191. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "This is all right, but please continue." At that time, Ramananda Roy replied, "I don't think my intelligence goes beyond this." And we're at verse 192, and this chapter doesn't end for another 100 verses of this nectar, just over 300. Roy Ramananda then informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that there was another topic known as Prema Vilas Vivarta. "You may hear of this from me." Ramananda Roy said, "But I do not know whether you will be happy with it or not." Purport. These statements are set forth for our understanding according to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Amrita Prabhava Bhashya. In essence, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Ramananda Roy, "My dear Ramananda, the explanation you have given about the goal of life and the pastimes of Srimati Radharani and Krishna is certainly the truth. Although this is factual, can you continue telling me more if there is anything more to say?" In reply, Ramananda Roy said, "I do not think I have anything to say beyond this, but there is a topic known as Prema Vilas Vivarta, which I will explain to you. I do not know whether it will bring you happiness or not." Saying this, Ramananda Roy began to sing a song he had composed, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, out of the ecstasy of love of Godhead, immediately covered Ramananda's mouth with his own hand. Purport. The topics that are about to be discussed between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy cannot be understood by a materialistic poet or by intelligence or material perception. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur states that the spiritual mellow can be realized only when one is situated on the transcendental platform beyond the material stage of goodness. That platform is called Vasuddha Sattva, Sattva Vasudham, Vasudev Sabditam. Realization of the Vasuddha Sattva platform is beyond the pale of material world and is not perceived by bodily senses or mental speculation. our identification with the gross body and subtle mind is different from the spiritual understanding. Since the intelligence and mind are material, the loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are beyond their perception. Sarvo Padhi Vinirmuktam Tat Parat Vena Nirmalam. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 19, text 170. When we are free from all material designations and our senses are completely purified by the bhakti process, we can understand the sense activities of the absolute truth. Rishikesh Sevanam Bhaktir Utyache. Chaitanya Madhya 19, 170. The spiritual senses are beyond the material senses. A materialist can think only of the negation of material variety. He cannot understand spiritual variety. He thinks that spiritual variety simply contradicts material variety and is a negation or void. But such concepts cannot even reach the precincts of spiritual realization. The wonderful activities of the gross and subtle body are always imperfect. They are below the degree of spiritual understanding and are inferior. The spiritual mellow is eternally wonderful and is described as Purna Sudha Nityamukta. That is, complete, perfectly pure, and eternally liberated from all material conceptions. When we are unable to fulfill our material desires, there is certainly sorrow and confusion. This is described as vivarta. But in spiritual life, there is no sorrow, inebriety, or imperfection. Srila Ramananda Roy was expert in realizing the spiritual activities of Srimati Radharani and Krishna. And Ramananda's spiritual experience was placed before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as he inquired whether the Lord approved his realization of spiritual truth. There are 3 books prominent in this connection. One is written by Bhaktidas Bula, and it's called Vivarta Vilas. Another one was compiled by Jagadananda Pandit and is called Prema Vivarta. And Sri Ramananda's book is called Prema Vilas Vivarta. So when he's talking to Lord Chaitanya, he mentioned there's something else. I don't know if you approve of it. But that's his own particular poetry on this subject. And then we have that book I've got coming. Bhanu Swami has translated that. The one by Jagadananda is Divine Transformation of Spiritual Love. That's the Prema Vivarta. So they're all, I'm not quite sure of Bhaktidas Bula. I don't know if that's even available. Okay, so the Vivarta Vilas of Bhaktidas Bula is completely different from the other 2 books. Sometimes a university student or professor tries to study these transcendental literatures and attempts to put forth a critical analysis from a mundane view, with an end to receiving degrees like a PhD. Such realizations is certainly different from that of Ramananda Roy. If one actually wants to take a PhD degree from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and be approved by Ramananda Roy, he must first become free from all the material designations. Sarvapahi Vinirmukta Tat Parat Vena Nirmalam. That's also from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya, same text, chapter 19, 170. A person who identifies with this material body can understand these talks between Ramananda Roy and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Man-made religious scriptures and transcendental philosophical talks are quite different. Indeed, there's a gulf of difference between the 2. The subject matter has been very diligently described by Srimad Madhvacharya. Since material philosophers are situated in the material conception of life, they are unable to realize the spiritual prema vilas vivarta. They cannot accommodate an elephant upon a dish. Similarly, mundane speculators cannot capture the spiritual elephant within their limited conception. It's just like a frog's trying to measure the Atlantic Ocean by imagining it's so many times larger than his well. Materialistic philosophers and Sahajiyas cannot understand the talks between Ramananda Roy and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu concerning the pastimes of Sri Radha and Krishna. The only tendency of the impersonalists or the Prakrita Sahajiyas is to face the platform of impersonalism. They cannot understand spiritual variegatedness. Consequently, when Ramananda Roy attempted to sing his own verses, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped him by covering his mouth with his own hand. This is very, you can tell this is how personal this is. I'm going to read that verse because it was mentioned 3 times. Prabhupada mentioned that verse in chapter 19, 190. Bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are 2 side effects. One is freed from all material designation, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. I mean, we hear this so many times in our to engage in service. That service will purify us. Of course, chanting is the topmost service we can perform. It all begins with Shravanam Kirtanam, so we have to. So as purport, this verse is quoted from the Narada Pancharatra. It's found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So talking about these 2 effects, we mentioned a couple of times about, it was brought up, but everybody is, are they pure devotees in the movement? And Prabhupada made a comment, defending the devotees. They're all pure devotees. But if you read what the symptom is of a pure devotee, of course, devotees are broken down in the 11th canto. You got Kanishta, Madhyamam, and Uttama. Uttama is the topmost platform. A pure devotee sees everybody as a pure devotee. That's a symptom of a pure devotee. That's one of the symptoms you read about how you can identify a pure devotee. Of course, now I'm not on that platform, obviously. But for preaching, you come down off the Madhyamam, the Uttama platform, and you preach on the intermediate platform because there's some discrimination. Because you teach people to stop, like Prabhupada is saying here, to come off the mundane platform. You can't understand this unless you're on the Sudasattva platform, pure goodness. So there has to be some discrimination there in order to help people to understand what's right and what's wrong, and what's mundane, what's material, what's spiritual, what's transcendental. Okay, 194, translation. Alas, before we met, there was an initial attachment between us, brought about by an exchange of glances. In this way, attachment evolved. That attachment has gradually grown, and there is no limit to it. Now that attachment has become a natural sequence between ourselves. It is not that it is due to Krishna, the enjoyer, nor is it due to me, for I am the enjoyed. It is not like that. This attachment was made possible by mutual meeting. This mutual exchange of attraction is known as Manobhava, or Cupid. Krishna's mind and my mind have merged together. Now during this time of separation, it is very difficult to explain these loving affairs. My dear friend, though Krishna might have forgotten all these things, you can understand and bring this message to him. But during our first meeting, there was no messenger between us, nor did I request anyone to see him. Indeed, Cupid's 5 arrows were our via medium. Now, during this separation, the attraction has increased to another ecstatic state. My dear friend, please act as a messenger on my behalf, because if one is in love with a beautiful person, this is the consequence. Purport. These verses were originally composed and sung by Ramananda Roy himself. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur suggests that during the time of conjugal enjoyment, the attachment might be compared to Cupid himself. However, during the period of separation, Cupid becomes a messenger of highly elevated love. Allergy season is coming. All right. This is called prema, vilas, vivarta. When there is separation, conjugal enjoyment itself acts like a messenger. And that messenger was addressed by Srimati Radharani as a friend. The essence of this transaction is that transcendental loving. The essence of this transaction is that transcendental loving affairs are relishable during separation as during conjugal enjoyment. When Srimati Radharani is fully absorbed in love of Krishna, she mistook a black tamal tree for Krishna and embraced it. This mistake is called prema vilas vivarta. So this mood of separation is where we're now being discussed here. It's pretty much impossible to understand this. How can separation be as good, as the actual being together? I mean, absence makes the heart go fonder, so there is some type of material understanding of it. But here we're talking something completely different. It is so different that it's, even though, much less us trying to explain it, Krishna couldn't even explain it to Uddhava. He wanted him to understand and send a message, but anybody could. But he wanted him to go to Vrindavan to see these gopis and to see firsthand this mood and how their love for him. I mean, a picture is worth 1,000 words or 1,000,000 words, and he understood this. And this also came out in the argument at the end of the first volume of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where Narada Muni was trying to see who was the greatest recipient of Krishna's mercy. And it brought him eventually to Dwarka, into one of Krishna's palaces. And there was a discussion with Balaram was there, Uddhava was there, Rukmini was there, all the queens were there, Devaki were there, Kamsa's mother, Padmavati. Of course, they were all, Rukmini and Balaram, because they had actually been there. They experienced it. They know firsthand what it's like. Uddhava had been there and experienced it. So they're saying the only way you're going to be able to mitigate this misery is to go back and actually be with them again. But Padmavati was like, no way. It's not, they just need to go there. They didn't even treat him nicely. They didn't even give him shoes to wear. They barely fed him. They gave him some milk sweets. So in this way, she, and if he did any kind of work, he was a child, like child labor. They put him to work, taking care of the cows. So many things she tried to discredit. Those good for nothings. Can imagine anybody making that comment. But that kind of upset Rukmini a little bit. No, not Rukmini. Balaram's mother. Rohini, sorry. Thank you. She got upset by that because she was there. She experienced it, not Rukmini. Rukmini was in this conversation also. She brings up the fact that when Krishna is sleeping, all he daydreams and dreams about is the gopis. Right? Satyabhama says, what do you mean when he's sleeping? That's all he thinks about during the day. So we can see this in a little bit, this mood of separation. They all got a little understanding. And then Narada Muni ultimately understood that the highest recipient of Krishna's love are the gopis. And so Sanatana Goswami says that is the conclusion and then the main understanding of Volume 1 of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita is to come away with that understanding, that the gopis are the greatest recipients of Krishna's mercy. And understanding that, then you can understand Volume 2. Okay, 195. Oh, my Lord, you live in the forest of Govardhan Hill, and like the king of elephants, you are expert in the art of conjugal love. O master of the universe, your heart and Srimati Radharani's heart are just like shellac and are now melted in your spiritual perspiration. Therefore, one can no longer distinguish between you and Srimati Radharani. Now you have mixed your newly invoked affection, which is like vermilion, with your melted hearts, and for the benefit of the whole world, you have painted both your hearts red with this great palace of the universe. Purport: this verse quoted by Ramananda Roy is included in Rupa Goswami's Ujjvala Nilmani, Stayabhavi Parakarana 155. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirmed these verses recited by Sri Ramananda Roy, saying, "This is the limit of the goal of human life. Only by your mercy have I come to understand it conclusively. The goal of life cannot be achieved unless one practices the process. Now being merciful upon me, please explain that means by which this goal can be attained." Sri Ramananda replied, "I do not know what I am saying, but you have made me speak what I have spoken, be it good or bad. I am simply repeating the message. Within these three worlds, who is so undisturbed that he can remain steady as you manipulate your different energies? Actually, you are speaking through my mouth. At the same time, you are listening. This is very mysterious. Anyway, kindly hear the explanation of the process by which the goal can be attained." Purport: Srila Sanatana Goswami has advised us to hear about Krishna from a Vaishnav. He has explicitly forbidden us to hear from a Vaishnav. Thus, quoting the Padma Purana, Srila Sanatana Goswami warns that one should not hear anything about Krishna from an Vaishnav. However great a mundane scholar he may be, milk touched by the lips of a servant has poisonous effects. Similarly, talks about Krishna given by a Vaishnav are also poisonous. However, because a Vaishnava is surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his talks are spiritually potent. In the Bhagavad Gita 10:10, the Supreme Lord says, "Tesam satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadame buddhiyogam tam yenamam upiyanti te." To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. When a pure Vaishnava speaks, he speaks perfectly. How is this? His speech is managed by Krishna himself from within the heart. Sri Ramananda Roy accepts this benediction from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, he admits that whatever he was speaking was not derived from his own intelligence. Rather, everything was coming from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu according to the Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Sarvasha chaham vidis sanishvisto matashmitir ganam apohanam cha vedascha sarir aham eva vedyo vedanta krid veda vid eva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the all intelligence emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. the supersoul within the heart of everyone. Nonetheless, non-devotees want to ask the Supreme Lord for sense gratification. Therefore, non-devotees come under the influence of Maya, the illusionary energy. A devotee, however, is directed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and comes under the influence of Yoga Maya. Consequently, there is a gulf of difference between the statements made by a devotee and those who are made by non-devotees. I mean, there's a lot of what we call materially intelligent people in this world. I mean, there's scientists who study all kinds of things, and they're very intelligent, and a lot of them you see in professors, they have the ability to, communicate very nicely. But we understand that they're very dangerous to hear these individuals because they can craft an argument. And so, speak for myself, who's not very intelligent, in the beginning of our devotional service and throughout it, we have to make sure that we continue to hear from the right sources. That's being properly situated. Hearing from those, as Prabhupada described here, who speak nothing about the qualities and glories of Krishna. This is what you hear. Another symptom of a pure devotee. It says in the 5th canto, chapter 12, text 13, there's no question of hearing topics of politics and sociology in the association of pure devotees. The only thing you will hear is the glorification of Krishna, Krishna's pastimes. So this is a difference, who we hear from. That's why we mentioned just earlier that devotional service begins with Shravanam and Kirtanam, chanting and hearing. So Prabhupada is stressing this point here, that how important that is, because it affects our faith. When we hear atheists say God is unreal, that's those types of things are very dangerous because they haven't been able to measure God, be able to put him in a laboratory, put him under a microscope. This is their ignorance. Any questions as we move along? Any comments? What do you want to? 201. So we're going to learn the process. The pastimes of Radha and Krishna are very confidential. They cannot be understood through the mellows of servitude. Let's read that again. The pastimes of Radha and Krishna are very confidential. They cannot be understood through the mellows of servitude, fraternity, and parental affection. Cannot be understood. Now I'll read that 3 times. Actually, only the gopis have the right to appreciate these transcendental pastimes. And only from them can these pastimes be explained. So all these acharyas, all the Goswamis, they're all gopis. We understand that. The Gaura-dipika. But it's been revealed that these are all eternal associates. Ramananda Roy. These are all. And the ones who aren't gopis, Nityananda's followers, are cowherd boys. So they're saying this is why we're able to understand it, because they're explaining this to us. These gopis, even though they're dressed up like males, we understand who they really are. Without the gopis, these pastimes between Radha and Krishna cannot be nourished. Only by their cooperation are such pastimes broadcast. It's their business to taste the mellows. Wow. Without the help of the gopis, one cannot enter into these pastimes. Only one who worships the Lord in the ecstasy of the gopis, following in their footsteps, can engage in the service of Shri Shri Radha Krishna in the bushes of Vrindavan. Only then can one understand the conjugal love between Radha and Krishna. There is no other procedure for understanding. Purport. I mean, they've been handing this down since Lord Chaitanya, Madhvacharya, but then since Lord Chaitanya, they're carrying this one disciple after another. Guru disciple. This is a civic succession. And they're bringing all this and carrying this to us. They're preserving this. This is really pretty amazing what we're being given. Purport. The means of returning home back, for going back to Godhead, is devotional service. But Everyone has a different taste in the Lord's service. One may be inclined to serve in servitude, dasharas, fraternity, sakyaras, parental love, vatsalyaras, but none of these can enable one to enter the service of the Lord in conjugal love. To attain such service, one has to follow the footsteps of the gopis in the ecstasy of Sakya Bhav. Then only can one understand the transcendent mellows of conjugal love. You got to have it to give it. If you don't have it, you can't give it to anybody. You can only give to the level that we have. That's the only thing we can share, our own realizations, and to our own level of bhakti, we can give that. If we have prema, we can give it. If we're one of these gopis, they can give this type of love. That's where we have to get it. That's why it's so important to hang on, because this mercy will be received. Of course, the window is not that great. Of course, 10,000 years seems like forever, but if you die and you go to some heavenly planet, you could lose it. Yeah, you've got to have to wait another 1,000 ages before Krishna comes again. If you're fortunate, you maybe get to go there and be with Krishna. Okay, one who expands the conjugal love of Krishna and its enjoyment among the gopis is called a Saki. Such a person is a confidential gopi in the conjugal affairs. Such assistants are like jewels in the form of Krishna's confidence. The actual business of the Sakti is described in the Ujjvala Nila Mandi Saki, Parakarna 97 and 90 through 99. In conjugal pastimes of Krishna, Krishna is the hero, Nayaka, and Radhika is the heroine, Nayika. The first business of the gopis is to chant the glories of both the hero and the heroine. Their second business is gradually to create a situation in which the hero may be attracted to the heroine and vice versa. Their third business is to induce each other to approach the other. Their fourth business is to surrender unto Krishna. The fifth is to create a jovial atmosphere. The sixth, to give them assurance to enjoy their pastimes. The seventh, to dress and decorate both hero and heroine. The eighth, to show expertise in expressing their desires. The ninth, to conceal the faults of the heroine. And the 10th is to cheat their respective husbands and relatives. The 11th is to educate. The 12th, to enable the hero and heroine to meet at a proper time. The 13th, to fan the hero and heroine. The 14th, to sometimes reproach the hero or heroine. And the 15th, to set conversations in motion. And the 16th, protect the heroine in various means. You see, the gopis got a lot on their plate. They got a lot they're doing. This is like, full-time service. Some materialist sahajas cannot actually understand the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, manufacture their own lifestyles without referring to authority. Such sahajas are called Saki Beki, and sometimes they are called Gora Nagari. They believe that the material body, which is fit to be eaten by jackals and dogs, is enjoyable for Krishna. Consequently, they artificially decorate the material body to attract Krishna, thinking themselves Sakis. But Krishna is never attracted by artificial grooming of the material body. As far as Srimati Rani and her gopis are concerned, their bodies, homes, dresses, ornaments, endeavors, and activities are all spiritual. All these are meant to satisfy the spiritual senses of Krishna. Indeed, they are so pleasing and endearing to Krishna that he is subjugated by the influence of Srimati Rani and her friends. They have nothing to do with anything mundane within the 14 planetary systems of the universe. Although Krishna is attractive to everyone, he nonetheless is attracted by the gopis and Srimati Radharani. And one short paragraph, one should not be misled by mental concoctions, supposing this material body to be perfect and deeming oneself a Saki. This is something like Ahagra Popasana, that is, Mayavadi's worship his own body as the supreme. Srila Jiva Goswami has cautioned mundaners to abstain from such conceptions. He also warns that thinking oneself one of the associates of the supreme without following the footsteps of the gopi is an offense, as thinking oneself the supreme. Such thinking is an aparad. One has to practice living in Vrindavan by hearing the talks of the gopis and Krishna. However, one should not consider himself a gopi, for that is an offense. Okay, thank you. All glories to Sri Guru.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Enam Kanvanda Aravindalayatatam Bhagavatam Samasitam Buddhasundaram Kandar Akom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobha Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Vikayanti Viramanti Ananta Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham
Namaham Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutalaya Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Samaniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurumani Pacha Sesha Shunyavade Vasyachade Satarane Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gatada Srivasati Gaurakrindana Sri Krishna Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasade Gauranga Pranda Sri Advaita Sivasade Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Gadadhara Sivasade Gauranga Pranda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Govinda Jaya Jaya Upala Jaya Jaya Radharamana Hare Govinda Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya Upala Jaya Jaya Radharamana Hare Govinda Jaya Jaya. Jaya Haganokinanurad, Haganokinanurad, Nayad, Haganokinanurad, Haganokinanurad, Nayad, Rate, Rate, Rade, Rade, Rade. No, Rade, 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 Jaya Radhe, Jaya Sri Radhe, Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa. Gauti Vaishnav Vrindagajaya Namacharya Charina Thakur Gajaya. Friends, say Gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shiva Gadada Gaur Bhakta Vrindagajaya. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Jaya Mukunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuram Ki Jai Jagadava Swami Ki Jai Vinamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasadevi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious to Shri Guru Gauranga Shalom. Chaito Darpanamarjanam Abhamatvagni Devapadam Deya Kaira Vichandrika Vikardanam Vijayvada Jivanam Anandam Mudivardhanam Pratpadam Pranamatasvadanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Namam Hari Hari Shakti Gadgada Rudiagada Jam Vishena Chaksha Parchayata Shunyai Cham Jagatsarvam Govinda May Asli Shiva Pada, Anashtabam, Adarshadam, Amritam, Kurotava, Yata Tata Babadata Lambato, Vat Prananata Stusahiva Naparaha. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon, is a life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. Unless you have hundreds and millions of names, Krishna and Govinda, in these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. Not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one could chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, what do my eyes be decorated with tears of love, especially when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? As my body stand unread at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considered a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me brokenhearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shikshashtaka ki jai. Okay. So break fast at 8:15. 8:12, I'm sorry. 8:12 is the break fast. Paramananda. From where? Minneapolis. Haribo. Welcome, Paramananda. Minneapolis, where it's nice and warm.